Figured I'd start off with a cool video, you know. There we go. So, my name is Ben Hawkins. I'm a senior research engineer with Aerospace Corporation, and I'm here to talk about how my team and I are trying to get after problems that exist in Space Force as far as operator training, development, and then accurate cyber exercises. At the moment, they focus heavily on space, of course, the Space Force, but cyber is often left out, and it creates a huge gap when you're talking about training cyber operators to defend these things. And so if a red team comes in and they're making effects in an exercise, and then nothing's integrated in the range on the space side, you can see how that's not realistic at all. So these space operators are just like, oh, I'm fine, nothing happens. But if you integrate them, then actually, you know, it's like you can turn off the link and all that. So that's the problem statement, and I'll get into what we're doing with Moonlight Defender. So we've had two so far. Moonlight Defender 1 was awesome. We were kind of running on the momentum from Hackassat, which loosely affiliated with, and that had the Moonlighter vehicle. I don't know how many people were there, heard about it, but it was an actual CubeSat that everyone in this world launched between Aerospace, MITRE, AFRL, and the Space Force, and its sole reason for existence was cyber tests and exercises and Hackassat. So after Hackassat ended, we all came together and it's like, what can we do with this thing that obviously cost a little bit of money? And so we wanted to do something for Space Force that used an actual satellite. And it provided them, that coolness factor, but also, some accurate data into what they can and can't do, like skill level wise. So we made it a purple team exercise because my side of things, we were working with the aggressors, the cyber aggressors, and then Aaron and everyone's side of things, they were working on blue. And so we wanted to come together and do our flavor of purple teaming, which is utilizing like smaller exercise windows for effects windows, and then coming together, talking about it, identifying if something was a range problem, or was this red doing this, was this did blue stop it, and so they could both learn because they're really at the same skill level currently. So everyone needs this training, and we aligned it with the training requirements that exist in Space Force. So we're not just doing cool stuff to do cool stuff. It's aligning with the tasks and certifications that they need to have to be effective operators, to maintain these qualifications and then inform new tasks, things that they should know. So Aaron's in the room, so I'm not really going to explain too much about Moonlighter, but here's a picture. It's a 3U CubeSat. It had separate flight control and then the cyber payload that people went after through APIs, but it was in low Earth orbit and it kind of went out of orbit a little earlier than we expected, so we only got one exercise. Space is hard, This is the range we were using, so I know, it's the whole thing, but so Moonlighter had two different AWS VPCs that was using, this is like the gaming environment, and this is the at a scope, actual flight control, then out to the antenna. And then we connected to the MITRE. They have a defensive cyber operations lab. It's got a lot of really cool blue tools and everything. And we want to collaborate, so we plugged the IFSEC tunnel, and then my team's dark sky range, which is just kind of a wild west of space, of course, ICSOT, enterprise systems, and it's something we do for prototyping, so we don't have to have like really cool infrastructure as code and everything that is hardened. So we just blow it away and then bring it back up and add things whenever we want, and it's really dynamic for that. So I am going to be kind of going a little fast because there's a lot of content to talk about in 25 minutes. So. This is the red team mission plan. When we came to the aggressors, they're very new to all of this, and so we wanted to help them out, but then also just give them, the bandwidth to do what they need to do to train their people the way that they think they should be trained. So we were just like, okay, you got to disrupt the imaging operations, and then you make the mission plan. You create this how you would do with military mission planning, and we included the Crimulants team because they built the game environment for Hackassat, and they're pretty smart. Reverse engineers, exploit devs, and all that. And then we had aerospace red team SMEs as well, and advisory capacity. LOE1, line of effort 1, the primary objective, disrupt the mission on orbit, of course, and then had some secondary objectives, exfil some information about the mission, disrupt ground systems, and then kind of smoke and mirrors, disrupt blue to throw them off the trail. LOE2, so they went after the ground imaging processing, and then also exfil information, and then disrupt and confuse. So they were kind of all over the place. They had a bunch of people in there, and so they wanted to do everything as young red teamers do, but they did get dialed in with the difficulty of breaking into space systems. So this is the kill chain, or one of them. So it was a straightforward buffer overflow, but we're dealing with satellites, so there's contact windows. So you can only talk to it at certain points in its orbit. So this got broken up as, you send an exploit and you send a payload, and then you have to wait to find out if it worked, and then you send something back up, and then you find out if you have, the access that you're trying to get. So that adds stress, pressure, all that good stuff on these guys that are, still really just trying to do things right. And then, they're working with things that are really unfamiliar terrain. And on the blue side, they were a little luckier because they were doing, something that they do every day. They sit on console. They're essentially SOC analysts. But they did not have familiarity with this system, this terrain. So that was a difficult lesson learned for all of us. I'll get into that with MD2. So we just wanted them to map the key terrain, get tool familiarity, build their own dashboards, come in there, make it their own, and then monitor the what they would think is key terrain. So they're looking at the ground, RF link, and space vehicle, and then respond and do what they do with their mission set day to day. Because we didn't want them to do a bunch of stuff that they're never going to be doing again, or they're not allowed to do. But we did give them some pretty powerful inline response tools, and you give a 19-year-old access to root and able to possibly wipe out an entire root directory. So may or may not have happened, but luckily that was in AWS. So shameless plug for Aerospace's Sparta. We mapped everything to MITRE attack and Sparta to keep that rigor in there, and we're not just pulling stuff out of thin air. It's rooted in reality with deep research going on to prove out these TTPs. And Sparta is more on the research side because we don't see a lot of good data in the wild from space attacks because they're just not happening at scale like they are on the enterprise side of the house. But check out Sparta for sure if you're doing anything space-wise. And then this is how we mapped it. I know it's messy. Anybody who's been in attack, I just wanted to show you that we did map and identify this to more than just their training objectives. Now I learned Canva and of course AI, so we got some cool branding for Moonlight Defender too. So we gained momentum, obviously, because nobody was really focusing on just cyber exercises in Space Force. So they were like, how do we get in? How do you do this again? How do you bring it to our units? Can we expand out? How many people can we throw at this? And it was a big thing for, Space Force leadership, like these, full bird colonels and generals to see this, okay, this is a solution to a problem that we've all just been talking about. Because I forgot to say at the beginning, but like our whole angle is to use existing resources, keep it low cost, but make it scalable and modular so it could be, space system anywhere. If you're familiar with cyber ranges and everything, a lot of times people want it to look exactly like their system, but we wanted to kind of pull the mindset out to like, what's the use case? What are you trying to get out of this? Like, does it matter that this has a different link here or that box isn't connected to that one? Or, when they see bad traffic going across the wire, how do they respond? So we really drove that home, Moonlight Defender 2, but then we added in the more of a military structure because we wanted to hand it off to Space Force with a nice little bow on it instead of them having to, put in all the layers of leadership and everything like that. And we included some more people. So we brought in the Space ISAC Watch Center team and added a whole intelligence element to the blue team. So all these units are made up. So none of this is real. That's not an APT. But we wanted a good storyboard so that they could follow. You want to keep people enthusiastic. We had actual cyber intel analysts on the floor with the blue team operators. We had one of our own being the satellite operator, and she was, monitoring it. we didn't do simulated contact windows or anything, but we didn't have Moonlighter anymore, so we had to use NASA NOS Cubed. It's a spacecraft simulation software. So we had that running in some VMs, and we were trying to see also what's the delta between doing this on live, assets on orbit versus simulations. Does it matter? If it does, how much? And how do we bridge those gaps to keep it available? Because you can't just go launching CubeSats to break into, every day. It's quite an expensive endeavor. So a little easier network diagram to see on this one. Essentially the same, just without AWS. And we had a heavy emphasis on ICSOT systems. So we have virtual PLC in there, HMI, and all of that, because that's becoming a heavy focus area that we want to get after is, the critical infrastructure elements of our Space Force architecture. So that was new to everybody, except for Brandon Baylor. So we had, I'll show the next slide coming up, that'll show the attack vector. But so red team operations this time we saw, they were a little too green to just do something like here, go forth and conquer. So we integrated them with our Aerospace Corp SMEs, put them shoulder to shoulder so that it was, less scary, like, I don't know what I'm doing kind of thing. And so it's like, no, this person can help you, and, let's collaborate, you can do this. And that was a very successful thing to do, is, putting someone right next to someone who's been doing it for quite a while. They didn't get into the spacecraft, but that was for possibly rangeisms and all that, but it wasn't really a big deal because they were so heavily in the ICSOT environment that it added huge training value there. And again, we gave them loose set of rules of engagement. There was just one area out of scope. And then they were able to just really focus on triggering things for Blue to give them something to learn, because they're not going in there completely silent. That's not the point of a cyber exercise. We wanted them to be noisy enough to be seen. We wanted to give Blue the opportunity to respond. All right, and then Blue team operations, a little cooler. We gave them, Cromulence was there again. They built a pretty awesome CTF that aligned with the scenario, because the whole concept was that a satellite that was exactly the same as the one that they were protecting was already compromised, and so they had logs and a bunch of IOCs from that, and so they could go through and do these cool CTF challenges and get them ready, get them in the mindset, but then also get familiarity with the system that we were providing them. The ICSOT thing was definitely a miss on our part on not realizing that they've just never seen it, they've never protected it or attacked it. So Brandon did a shoot from the hip, quick training for everyone. Just get them familiar with the implementation as it exists here. We didn't give them like a full, this is how this industry works. But it helped. I mean, the operator defending that whole factory environment was like, I think, straight out of high school, and it was just him. And I'll show you a picture, but there was just pallets flying in our simulated factory, and he had no idea how to get after it. And then the Blue team, they kept within, what they do every day as a Space Force DCO operator. So again, there's no, oh, this is all this awesome stuff you could do. It's now, this is how you can do it at work. This is how you're going to do it here. And they're a white cell, kind of grew. We matured a little bit because a lot of us were relatively new to putting on military exercises, like putting them on, and there's a lot of things that they don't tell you. So we were getting a little bit better, and we were bringing in more expertise and more people that have a lot of deep familiarity with it. Here's the intended attack vector. So we gave them persistence, initial access, because we didn't want to waste time. We only had 5 days, so we didn't want to waste time with them, like trying to get in and all that, banging their head against the wall. But so they were going to laterally move through our factory environment. It was a satellite factory, and then get into the ground station, then up into Argus, the satellite, this guy now. And then they had other objectives, like the smoke and mirrors thing, but they were defacing websites and doing a lot of other things. Because again, they had such a big team. You got to give someone something to do. So we got a bit of scope creep in the scenario itself, but it went off pretty good. And so here's some visuals, just to help out. So this, it's called Fact.io, and it's factory IO, and it's driven by PLC. So that virtual PLC that we had in there was driving this factory arm, and it's intended to not look like this. You got pallets going across, picks them up, stacks them, and so the exploit that was used just made it, throw them anywhere to kind of prove or to really drive home the fact of the dangers of cyber physical environments and what happens when you get in there, because that's lost a lot on most people, but especially space, because all of their key systems are in orbit, so they don't see them every day. They don't see the unintended consequences. And then over here behind Aaron's head, that's 42. That's part of NOS cubed, but it's driven by the data and the telemetry going across the wire between core flight software from NASA and then the OpenC3 Cosmos ground instance. And so the intention was to make that start spinning, and then people are like, uh-oh, that doesn't go well. But yeah, we had that on there. It definitely added a level of pressure to everyone on the blue team, because they're seeing this and they're like, oh my God, I don't know how to do this. And then they got satellite working right now, and they're like, when's that going to start spinning? When's that going to start doing something weird? So it's just really driving home the realism on it. And here's a tool that one of our engineers made, Randy Tinney, is Space Invader. It's a attack platform for space systems. Right now, it's really focused on being rogue ground station, so it can, send erroneous traffic. She built something to ransomware the satellite. I'm not even going to get into because I don't know how to talk to it intelligently. But these are just these homebrew tools that we gave to the red team to show, there's a lot of power in these things if you just sit down and look at all this open source software. Because you just load a protocol library in there, and then all of a sudden it can act as a ground station immediately. And so, leveraging automation was really helpful, because you don't get a lot of that in doing cyber in space, because it's kind of a niche industry. And that's just what Cosmos dashboard looks like. So the ground stations is space operators looking at this, and then it sends and receives telemetry packets and everything to the satellite. So, with that rush of words, to summarize, so we wanted it to be realistic and beneficial, accurate cyber training that lined up with Space Force DCO needs, their training needs, because they have a lot of them, and they're facing the same problem that all of us are in this industry, is that cyber talent is very hard to come by, and then also someone also has to be convinced to join the military. So it's a tough problem set, and it's whole bunch of different issues there, but our focus is just let's do what we can with what we have right now. And it turns out there's a lot of value in the things that already exist that we've been working on, that we have, that we could just provide up front. Because when you're talking to leaders, a lot of times they just think this is way out of the spectrum of reality because of the cost, the scale of things that you need, and so using open source software and just plugging it into a range. I'm running a range on vSphere 6.7, so I mean it's not like this is a very advanced system. Yeah, and keep it a framework so it can modular, scalable, and efficient. I hate wasting resources, and especially when there's a lot of people doing these things, and you just need to shift to, okay, now instead of protecting X system or X server, you're protecting a satellite. So there are a lot of key differences, but it's not as crazy as you'd think. So yeah, I'd love to collaborate. We're an FFRDC, so we're a nonprofit, research and development, so we can work with a lot of different people. We're never trying to sell anything. So please let me know. And I'll just real quick talk about this. So Argus and Moonlight Defender 2 was NOS cubed. And then we noticed that people lost that coolness factor if they don't have something. So modeled and printed this, and then Randy built a bunch of custom CFS apps on it. So it's running core flight software, and it's a Raspberry Pi architecture, but it talks over wireless to a Raspberry Pi ground station running Cosmos. So I mean, it's pretty representative of a satellite. You're not going to launch it into space because it's 3D printed, but But you can break into it. I got a whole web app up, so just don't take down the web app because it's lazy. So, and then I have to go back in and push it back up. But thank you. Really appreciate everyone's time.